Hello, everyone. We are back today. Been a bit of hiatus from the start of the playoffs, where we did some initial predictions and thoughts around who would get to the finals, and we are now at the stage where the finals are actually happening. And today I'm joined not only to talk about the finals, but to talk a little bit about the draft because of his appearance on the show today. General manager of the LA Lakers, Tim. Tim, you must be ecstatic with the lottery.
Yes, I am. I thought for sure I was going to drop to five, and then basically be picking leftover of the four to six band of players. But nope, stayed top three, and I think I've pretty much got a top two list sorted out. So it depends on what Miles does with top pick, and I do have some info for that we can talk about later when we get to the draft.
Yeah, sure, of course. We'll certainly touch on that. But before we talk about the draft, we've got to have a little look at the finals that's been happening and the topsy turvy nature of it, really. So we're going to dive into that straight away and get your thoughts on it. Um, it's, where is this finals going to end up, really? So I guess at the moment it's been a bit of a battle with Oklahoma City and Miami currently at two apiece, both sort of snatching home court off of each other. What's interested you so far in this series?
Well, it's a really interesting matchup because on the one hand, you have a GM who is phenomenal at strategies in Silogical, whichever brand he prefers. And on the other hand, you've got what is arguably a much more complete team, but probably one of the weakest GMs strategically in the playoffs with Andrew, eight timer, zero timer, or whatever. I So it's been interesting that he that Stanley Johnson Jr. keeps getting played because I've held for a very long time that he's a player that will lose you a championship rather than win one. And I think his struggles in the first few games of the finals really kind of validated that. And the fact that when he got hurt last round, I believe that's when the Thunder, were able to turn around and force the game seven. So, it would be. I keep saying it would be a much better team if Stanley Johnson was just coming off the bench rather than starting. I mean, his offensive, he kills offensive efficiency and he can't play defense at all. So,
Yeah, it's been an interesting assessment, really, of how good a player or how bad a player you think Stanley Johnson is, and certainly it has been highlighted by the first few games here for OKC in the finals. I mean, if we go to, I think this is the first game, just double check. So yeah, the first game, obviously, they got up and his shooting wasn't great, but obviously he got to the free throw line and caused some issues. The second game, obviously, it kind of didn't quite happen again. Similar sort of thing. He seems to be a player who takes a lot of shots, doesn't really shoot particularly efficiently, but he does get to the line and cause fouls. If you look at game three again, see here he had a terrible game, really, over five from the field and didn't cause any fouls or get to the line at all. And then the latest game, obviously, he shot much better. He didn't get to the line as much as first couple of games, but his shooting was definitely much improved. So, do you think, Tim, that Stanley Johnson is the key for this matchup, or are there other factors in play for this finals?
well, a lot of it is trying to attack Damian Lillard's crafty defense with Bledsoe and trying to go after some of his other guys. Problem is, Miami, um, they although people have said they overdrafted, and I still think that Dragon Bender pick was the worst one that he's made. He's made some picks that people have thought have been overdrafted, but um, he has such versatility with his roster that he's able to compensate for a talent deficiency by shifting guys around and creating complete havoc with the sub matrix. So, he was able to beat a superior talent team in Cleveland. He's doing the same in Orlando. And it's because he has that roster that he's able to switch guys around and play chess matches.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the first few games here we haven't seen too much in terms of sub matrix movement yet. It's interesting for me that Ben Simmons has been playing center a lot, and means that Josh Smith has been coming off the bench as he has done in the regular season. But in some of the other playoff matchups, he's kind of moved Simmons around a lot more. So it'll certainly be interesting to see whether that stays the same. I mean, in terms of Miami's viewpoint here, I mean, is Simmons the only factor for you, or do you think there are other factors at play?
It's for me. It's primarily Simmons. I remember when I wrote that glowing article about him when the draft class first broke, um, and he's able to do literally everything, and I think he's the entire key to all the things that they're able to do. Um, Josh Smith, of course, is an excellent player. Um, although Ding Yuan Ying was overdrafted in most people's mind, to me he was the guy I really wanted um, at 23. Um, and people said, "Oh, that's an overdraft. That's an overdraft." But I was looking at him and I was like, "He's a really excellent player." Um, you can see his 3-point shooting has been phenomenal in the postseason, and he's been a key scorer off the bench. Um, so he slots in perfectly. He can play the two, he can play the three. He fits in that versatility mode. So obviously, Damian Lillard will be able to score points and do it efficiently. Can't bring the defense, but he does everything else so well that you know he's he's able to be shifted around. I think he was playing small forward during one series, so
He
um,
was in the Cleveland matchup, definitely.
yeah, yeah,
I can't remember who he put at point guard in the end, but he did move Lillard to the three, and I think moved Simmons around quite a lot in that. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean it's an interesting battle because I mean just in terms of a lot of people thought that if Miami continued to play a lot of zone defense, then OKC would easily win this and would run away with it. And obviously, he's toned down that zone defense, but it's kind of become a bit of a shootout in terms of from that 3 point range. And it's fair to say Miami are actually kind of winning that battle at the moment. And it's kind of OKC, I think, who need to make adjustments and need to put a little bit more pressure on some of the depth of Miami, because if you look at it starting five to starting five and even starting eight to starting eight, it's clear that OKC have the better talent at this stage, purely with experience and um, balance and defense. And
And
for me,
and
it's
and I think that's also one of the problems that you have with Stanley Johnson Jr. In the lineup. He's taking shots away from guys like Klay Thompson, who has been just incredible all playoffs long, and who, yeah, definitely is the key to breaking that zone. So when you're taking shots away from Klay, when you're taking shots away from Eric Bledsoe, and you're giving them to Stanley Johnson, that's where you're seeing these narrow losses that OKC has been having, and even when they win, it's not like they really needed, SJJ's points to do it. So I personally think they need to have him come off the bench, put somebody else in the starting lineup who won't take the shots away from that strong perimeter game that Oklahoma City has.
Yeah, no, I think the key for Oklahoma City in this is one, getting the best out of Klay Thompson. If they can get Klay Thompson firing, then they'll be fine. And I think if number two, if they can keep Bledsoe on the court, if they can stop Bledsoe from getting in foul trouble and keep him on the court and keep that defense on the court at point guard, then they could edge this over Miami. But having said that, we did mention obviously Miami's rotation and ability to adapt, and I guess that's what makes it intriguing. This finals really is it's two teams that probably nobody expected to get there, who are there now, and it's do or die moment. There's each team has to win two games to take the title, and it's going to be a long stretch. I think. I mean, can you see this going to Game 7, or can you see it being wrapped up earlier?
I think it'll go to Game 7. Game 7. Yeah, hopefully Andrew will make the adjustments he needs to. Miami will always make adjustments. So I think it can very easily go to Game 7. I mean, even if Miami wins out, it would end in 6. So all OKC would need to do would be to win one of the next two games, and we go to 7.
Yeah, I think I can see this going to 7 as well, and I guess one of the factors I can see possibly, I could see either team winning this. I can't sit here and definitively say I think X team will win because OKC probably have the edge in terms of talent. Miami have the edge in terms of probably the sub matrix and strategizing, and I think in Miami's favor as well, they've got Dennis Smith coming back in 4 days' time, so he should be back for I think that's Game 6 and Game 7, which may just give them a slight swing in terms of bringing the talent back that they're missing. But I've honestly, I mean, if Smith comes back healthy and plays the similar how he did against Cleveland and co, then it means that he might free Lillard up to swing into the 2-3 position again. And then that could cause some issues for Andrew and OKC. But I mean, if you had to sit here and do or die moment, which team do you see winning out, or do you think it's close again as well?
I do think it's close, but I do think Miami has that edge. I think if Dennis Smith comes back and the series isn't over, then I don't think so. OKC really needs to win this next game, like other people have said, to give themselves two chances to try and hopefully have some of the dice rolls go their way. If they lose Game 5, then I think Miami wins it.
Yeah, it's going to be close, and it's going to be an interesting one to watch. And I guess one thing that has interested me about this finals is that we've got two teams here who have had completely different strategies to building a team. We've got one who essentially went to the very bottom of the CSL standings. Obviously got a lot of draft picks, used them, utilized them to the best ability that he could have, really. I mean, we can sit here and argue all day about Bender and other guys who he's drafted, but whatever said and done, he's got his team to a finals. And OKC have gone the other way. They did have the opportunity probably to this draft to pick up a top 3, top 4 pick. They utilised that in the summer and obviously traded for some more ready now talent in Bledsoe and MKG and Thompson and Cohen and really went for it. And it's interesting that those two strategies have kind of got both these teams to the finals, and both general managers I think need to be applauded for that because different routes. I mean, one obviously from the bottom, one making a do or die moment in the summer. But we see a lot of teams sort of happy to sort of just continually pick up draft picks and not necessarily progress. And it's great to see two teams that have tried different things and have got their teams to the finals. And it's not the usual ones that we would have expected at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we all knew that Miami was an up and coming team. We probably figured it would be a couple years before they got to the stage, but um, the East was not as strong at the top as it normally is, and then of course Detroit going out to Philadelphia. Um,
Yeah.
in fact, we should we should be talking this playoffs about how Jabari Parker fucked everything up for everybody.
Let me pull Jabari up whilst you're talking, because he had probably one of the best players I've seen from a player in a sim league, really. So just I'm going to throw the stats out there because you might not be able to see it on your screen, Tim. But he played 13 games. He shot 49%. He averaged 35.4 points per game. Five 5.6 rebounds and an assist. But it was that scoring really that just completely destroyed Detroit in the end, wasn't it?
It destroyed pretty much everybody. I
Yeah,
mean,
it makes you wonder
yeah.
if they had a GM who actually was focused and made some adjustments, whether they could have gone all the way, really. Because with that sort of form, you got a guy scoring 35 points a game. Uh, they
Yeah.
could have easily got through, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
and I still want to know the story of what happened with those rumors I heard about John and TJ and the job and all that. I really
yeah,
want to
yeah.
know that. But okay, one thing I do have to do, I have to raise my hand and admit that I was wrong when I said Philadelphia made a mistake when they drafted Lonzo Ball.
Oh, yeah.
I missed
Mhm.
completely on that one. I take full responsibility for that. So
Yeah, he hasn't done anything particularly spectacular, but it's just a very good point guard who will distribute the ball. And when you've got a scorer like Jabari Parker, that's kind of two things you really need for a basketball team. A guy who can distribute the ball to your best scorer, and your best scorer has more shots. Simple, isn't
and,
it? Really, when you think about it. But
and he's also played elite defense as
oh
well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, for Philadelphia, I mean, I know we're going a little bit off topic here, but uh, next season, I mean, if they, I don't know what they've got in terms of cap situation or anything like that, but if they just were relatively active, that team could be a top four seed in the East, I think.
Now,
But we'll see, we'll see.
well, and I think we should also take a little bit opportunity to talk about because you guys went from like really struggling early on in the season, and then all of a sudden you were one game away from the finals, and it's like you didn't make any real trades or anything. So obviously, Muradic, fuck you, Muradic, for doing shit for me and then blowing up in Portland. Obviously, he was a big key, but what changes, what adaptations did you make that allowed you to be the hottest team in the second half and then just get so close to the finals?
um, I mean, just spilling it. So obviously, OKC got to the finals through beating us, but I think it was for us. It was kind of sample size. So the team that I had, obviously, I knew how we did the season before. And I kept saying to a lot of people really that if you look at the actual numbers of the team after about 40 games, in terms of comparing it to last season to this season, we're actually very, very similar in terms of our output. I think the only slight off that we had was we had a Hayward injury, I think, early on this season. So we had to
Okay.
change the adjustment of the rotation to knock his minutes somewhere else. Um, and I think Al Horford's scoring was down slightly, but you looked at defense and you looked at actual offensive output, and we were very, very similar. In terms of adjustments, it was just in terms of trying to plug some of the players around for better lineups in the sub matrix. So it was better balance really because of Hayward's injury. That was the main reason.
Okay.
And when we did that and tweaked it, it meant that we were a bit more consistent, and that's kind of what carried us forward, really. Um, it wasn't. I didn't change anything too drastic. It was just because when you looked at the numbers, there was no change. It was just a lot of the games we were the previous season at that point winning by 3, 5, 6 points. We were losing by 3, 5, 6 points. So as a team, we should be a 0.500 team really. That's kind of where we sit, is around that. That's our median really. If you look at our defense and our offense and the difference, it's kind of there. So that was the only change. And then when you get to the playoffs, it's all about sub matrix and strategy. And we got a bit lucky with that really. But yeah, obviously OKC edged us in that one. They got through in Game 7 and deserved to go through in Game 7 really, because Andrew did adjust and make changes, and he got through fair and square really. And it's good to see that hopefully he'll make changes and adjust for the finals, and we'll see how it pans out for him. But it's an interesting finals, I think.
Yeah. So hypothetically, let's say you won Game 7 and you got to the finals. How do you think you would be doing against this Miami team?
I think we would have been in a similar situation to Andrew, really. I think in OKC. So we don't have probably as much talent as OKC, but when I look at matchups, we probably can edge it slightly, because Mirotic just had a fantastic playoffs. I'll pull his numbers up because I can't remember what he actually had, but he was performing out of his skin, which was fantastic. And it would have meant that Miami would have had to have thrown someone on him, probably, and that would have caused them problems. We'd have had Horford, who could have possibly matched up at Simmons at centre and at least slowed him down with Noah. And then the only downside is obviously we had Ingles injured, who was our best defender, which would have meant we could have probably even possibly thrown him at Simmons to see what he did. But yeah, I think we'd have been probably in a slightly worse situation than Andrew is now. I think we'd probably be Andrew's at 2-2. We'd probably be 3-1 down, I would imagine, by now, just because we don't have the same talent that OKC has.
Yeah, and it's interesting. One of the things that has come up in the Facebook chat is a lot of discussion where we think quite a few GMs have mentioned that they think the next evolution of the league is going to really be relying on elite shooters, because there's a projection that given Miami's success with the zone, we're going to experience a renaissance of the zone as a primary defense, and so shooters will become a much more important commodity.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I think Miami, if Miami win the finals, I think that's the first thing that we will see a lot of middle tier teams do. I think is that they will go, oh well, because defense is so expensive in this league, to get anyone who's half decent on defense, it's like a premium. We could see, well, shooters are fairly reasonably priced, aren't they, at the moment? Even if he can't play defense, he can shoot. We can pick up a couple of guys and see if that works, and then we might have some advantage against zones, and we can play zone ourselves and limit that man-on-man defense that would be a liability elsewhere. I mean, I think the interesting thing as well, if Miami were to come through this, is whether a lot of teams adopt the Miami strategy and essentially dump a huge amount of contracts, tank out and for 2 or 3 years, and try and get that top player and just build through draft picks.
The problem with that is you have to be a good enough trader and have enough of the assets to be able to get those draft picks. I know, and I don't know how Miami manages to con people into constantly giving up draft picks. It is the strangest thing to me, because it's like I try and get draft picks, and it's like, no, not giving away draft picks, and yet somehow
we've seen other teams do it. I mean, we've seen Boston, Houston, kind of go a similar route. um, in terms of selling a lot of their better assets to pick up picks. I think teams that I can think off the top of my head who, um, you know, probably may look at it and may either the shooter instance that we talked about or the draft instance that we talked about. You could go that route. I mean, the Clippers obviously had a disastrous free agency last year, not through any fault of their own, just through the wonderful world of DDS. And I mean, it could be an edge up for him to get back involved in terms of getting that team back up to the playoffs. Memphis is another one who last year had probably an average season for their standards. Been a consistent playoff team. I mean, you've got teams like the Hawks and the Pelicans who do have talent that they could trade to go that full bottom out route.
Yeah, and I know they've been getting a lot of offers for Anthony Davis, and that's one of the things that's going to be one of the big off-season storylines. Where does Anthony Davis go? Personally, I could see him going to Boston, or maybe Marcos will somehow again use his used car salesman brilliance and somehow talk New Orleans into giving up AD for a package that's less than he's worth.
Yeah, I could see him going to Boston quite easily with the assets they've got. They've got
Yeah.
a lot of young players they could package together and sell. Chicago are always in the running because Marcus is just such a great dealer, and he'll have something that he'll manage to offer out that will be of value. And I think we're also can't rule out the Sacramento Kings as well. We've got a lot of young talent who with Westbrook. Does he stay? Does he go? There's an opportunity there for them to try and get involved as well. So yeah, Davis is going to be the big talk about for this off season. But
Oh,
obviously,
and I would also include Phoenix in that as well.
yeah, yeah, no surprise. Again, they've got
Yeah.
lots of talent they could throw at it.
It
But
sucks being in the Pacific. Sorry.
but I mean, that's obviously something we can talk about later on
Yeah.
in the off season. But before we get to that stage, we obviously have the 2022 draft, which I know you are very excited about for obvious reasons. But it's coming up quite quickly now. There's obviously the interviews and workouts deadline. I think today or tomorrow. We've also got the combine out now as well. So it's going to be an interesting draft. I mean, obviously you've looked quite heavily at the top of the draft, and I haven't. So I'd be really interested to get your thoughts on how you see that panning out.
Okay. So the Denver Nuggets are looking at four players. They're looking at DeAndre Ayton. They're looking at Frank, and I'm gonna screw up these names. They're looking at Frank Ntilikina. Yeah,
Likinka, I think it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're looking at Jason Tatum,
Mhm.
and they're looking at Marvin Bagley. So those are the four guys that they're
Okay.
looking at.
So they're not looking at before we talk about those four guys, just I've got the latest big board up, but they're obviously not looking at Jalen Adams or Wendell Carter at all, or Trey Young, are the other ones that have kind of been in that top six for a while now.
No,
Um,
Jalen Adams, I think is he's a very interesting player. He's got a lot of fascinating talent in a lot of key areas,
mm,
um, and he's one of those guys where Jalen Adams, if he ends up with the right GM,
yeah.
who knows how to use him creatively,
Mm,
he will be a real difference maker and be able to do a lot of different things. Not scoring, that's something you won't be able
mhm.
to do, but he'll literally be able to contribute in every other facet of the game. So he's one of those players where the right GM will make him amazing. If he ends up in the wrong situation, he'll bust out.
Yeah.
Um, Trey Young will go in the top six.
Hmm.
Um, he could potentially, um, he'll go somewhere in the top six. I'm not sure exactly where. Um, the earliest I think he would go is three. Because Miles isn't considering him. I may or may not be considering him. But my guess is he goes somewhere three, four, five, maybe six.
Mm.
And who is the other one that you
Wendell
mentioned?
Carter, who's been in the top four for all of the big balls, I think.
Yeah, yeah. The reason Carter is in the top four is because of how well developed he is as a rebounder. I
Mm.
mean, we're talking literally right now. He could contend for the rebounding title.
Yeah.
That's how developed he is there.
Mm.
Um, I think he's going to be the number seven pick.
Okay.
Um,
So you see him dropping a little bit because he doesn't have that ceiling, I'm guessing. He's kind of already what you see is what you get with him.
yeah, I mean, he just doesn't have the total complete uh, talent
Mm.
that could push him up into that top six. Um, with the top six guys, we're basically talking about guys where, yeah, they might have a weakness or
Mm.
two in one or two areas, but they're so elite at some at very important areas for their positions
Mm.
that they're going to be drafted. And I think the Milwaukee Bucks have seven, if I remember right, because they dropped from five to seven. And if I remember correctly, Manu was very high on him. He made the comment on the Wendell Carter article that
Yeah.
he thought Carter could possibly at that time contend for the number one pick.
Mm.
So I think he would be a great landing spot at seven with Milwaukee. Um, and then after seven, it's like there's some talent there, but who really cares? It's not really worth the. You know, I've said this before. I really feel bad for the teams picking 8 to 14
Mm.
because at best you are getting a fifth starter, um, or a depth guy. 1 to 6, you're talking about guys who are legitimate all-star talents.
Yeah. Yeah.
So San Antonio, I know you're looking at trading 5. Do not fucking trade it, please. Don't. You need that talent.
So if we come back then, so just of the four you mentioned, so obviously Denver considering you said Tatum, Ayton, Frank N. We'll just call him Frank N for now, and Marvin
Yeah,
Bagley. So
yeah.
I guess for me, I'm from an outsider. I don't know anything about these guys really, but for me, is there anything going through Miles' head now? Because obviously he's got John Wall and he's got Josh Jackson at the moment. Is there anything going through his head thinking, I'm not going to take Tatum, I'm not going to take, uh, you know, Frank N,
Yeah,
Lita, because I've already
yeah.
got good young players or an elite player in those two categories. To me, then, does it focus it down on Aiton and Bagley?
Um, who does he have as his front court again?
So he's currently got John L. Stokes and Willie Cauley Stein.
Yeah.
So, I mean, or does he think Tatum, whilst he is a small forward, he could play a guard position, or Josh Jackson, who's already got, could play a guard position, and we'll run with those three guys, and I'll just build a front court through free agency or trades. Um,
Yeah, I mean, okay. Go back to Denver. Click on
mm,
the ratings. Okay. What are the scoring rating? What's Jackson's scoring rating?
so currently it's 75.
Okay. So, really, to have a championship team, you should have at least two guys who are, I would say, 70, 75 plus scoring minimum.
Mm.
You want two guys who you can build an offense around. And Tatum comes in as, he'll be that guy who can be that elite scorer. And also keep in mind that Tatum is 6'8", 205 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Denver could screw around with adding weight to him, but really, I mean, he's got Travian Graham as a starting shooting guard.
Mm-hmm.
So Tatum would fit in perfectly as the shooting guard in between Wall and Jackson. And, especially since, he's got some phenomenal. And Tatum is also a guy that if you're willing to play lighter, he can play power forward as well. He can do a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of that Jabari Parker thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to play with lighter matchups. So, he's got the versatility, he's got the scoring, he can rebound. Handling is just off the charts ridiculous.
Mm.
Um, so, and one thing also to keep in mind, John Wall is getting up there in years. So, by the time John Wall is ready to retire, you've got Tatum and Jackson on the wings. And, those are two elite scorers that you can run the offense through. And another thing to keep in mind is that by doing that, then it becomes much harder to match up against them because, if you try, say, for example, then you would need to have like two good wing defenders or you're going to get murdered by the one you don't cover. So there is a lot of sense for Tatum to go number one. I don't see Ayton going number one, to be perfectly honest. To me, although he's elite as hell,
So
like,
even though he's been the number one for pretty much the entire length of the season, and I have not heard anyone say anything bad about him as a 7'1" center who's 19 years old, who many have said is already
yeah,
at a good level.
yeah.
Um,
Especially right now, I would say right now, in his rebounding and his total defensive abilities, he's pretty close to an all-star right now.
mhm.
From what I remember, I'd have to go back up to my computer and look at my ratings. But yeah, he is developed to be a defensive rebounding stud from the get-go.
Mm.
Um, the problem is, do they want to take Ayton and then try and find a trade for Willie Cauley-Stein, which might really get a bit difficult because what's he making, like $10 million a year?
Uh, it's about 10 million, yeah, flat, more or less flat contract for 2 years. So
Yeah,
it's movable certainly, and
yeah,
Willie Cauley Stein is his ratings and stats are pretty solid enough. He could, be a solid starter or rotation piece somewhere else. So, um,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, he would obviously probably move him if he was going to pick Aiton.
yeah,
But it sounds like in terms of, I mean, we haven't even spoke about Frank N or Marvin Bagley, but it already
yeah.
sounds like from what you're saying, you're kind of convinced that Denver's going to take Tatum number one.
Not convinced. Let's not say that. I said it would make a lot of sense if they
So,
took Tatum.
so what about the other two then? So Frank N and Marvin Bagley.
Frank N would be a very good pick as well. He's somebody who, again, could slot in as the shooting guard to start off. And he could play shooting guard to start off, move Graham to a six-man combo guard role where I think he would excel. Um, and then when Wall is ready to retire, then Frank can move over to point guard because Frank will be is definitely the best point guard in this class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's a phenomenal two-way player. He can do, just about everything. So he would make a lot of sense as well. Bagley would make sense as well to put in the power forward spot next to Willie Cauley-Stein and move out Jarnell Stokes, who really needs to be a bench player. So, you know, you can make the case for any of these four guys. Um, a lot of people have also talked about Donovan Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Donovan Mitchell is another guy who's going to be a phenomenal, fantastic two-way player.
But you said he's not considering him at the moment.
No, he's not considering him at the moment. Although there's a lot of people who think Mitchell should be in play for the number one pick, and
Mm-hmm.
I could personally see that as well. I personally would not draft Mitchell. I don't like shooting guard to a 6'3". To me, that's like starting a 6'7" center like Stanley Johnson Jr. Sorry, another reason I hate the guy. But yeah. So you've got five guys there, and let's just put it out there, shall we? You've got those five guys, and you've got Trae Young. Those guys will be the top six in some order. Aiton, Frank, Bagley, Young, Mitchell, and who else was it? Oh, Tatum.
Tatum, yeah.
So those six guys will be top six picks. Wendell Carter will be number 7, and after that, nobody really cares. So that's pretty much how this draft shakes out.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of where you sit, have you got a definitive sort of top 2, top 3 list now, or are you still narrowing it down, or have you got a top? You've obviously mentioned a top 6 there, so you kind of believe
Yeah.
that's the top 6, but have you
Yeah.
narrowed that down for your own list, or are you still considering
Yeah.
all of the guys on there?
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much got a top 2.
Okay.
Just in terms of what our needs are, the players I like, etc. My own list is 2, rather than
Mm-hmm.
4. So
Yeah. Okay, and you'd be comfortable with both of those players now. I'm guessing you haven't done the workouts or interviews yet, and
no, not yet, because I just got back into town late last night.
yeah,
Awful
so
flight.
I'm guessing
Yeah.
that you don't think that's going to necessarily swing your view on your top 2.
It might. A lot of it is going to depend on the interviews.
Yeah.
But right now, currently, I have a top 2 that could expand to 3 or 4,
Mm-hmm.
just depending on how the interviews go. What I'll probably do is I've got 2 in mind. I'll probably go back, pick out a third, and basically spend all my interviews on those 3 guys,
Mm-hmm.
and then spend my final scouting and workouts on guys just further down the draft in case there's some hidden gems that are hiding somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, and I always tell people this: even if you don't have a pick in the draft, scout anyway, because it's very useful to have some idea of their potentials, so that you don't get screwed over in trading. And unless of course you're the Sacramento Kings and BT somehow managed, I'm very good at reading between the lines and figuring shit out based on the draft articles. BT, I think, is even better than me at that, which is scary. And that's how he's able to constantly pick the best guys without doing any scouting. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he always seems to manage to find the gem in around the pack from 20 to 30 in the draft. So I wouldn't be surprised if he manages to pick someone up again who everyone goes, who is he? And everyone in the draft team come out and go, he was the guy who was meant to go at number 7 overall or something. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised really. And the Phoenix Suns always have a knack of that as well. So I mean, obviously they're drafting a little bit higher this year, but yeah, they're the two teams that just seem to always pick a rabbit out of the hat when it comes to the draft. I mean, I guess in terms of we talked about the top six there. In terms of, you said sort of the 7 to 14 is a bit unlucky this year because
I would say 8 to 14.
8 to 14.
I personally do like Carter. I haven't done my ranges on him just because I like the top six so well. Carter, I was kind of like, nah. Um, but yeah, Carter is very good as well. I think he goes 7. Yeah, but once you hit 8, that's when it's kind of like, who do you take?
Mm.
Then yeah, and and I I'm being a bit down on that, but that isn't to say that they're not good players. It's just that you're going from sort of that either guaranteed all star or potential all star level
Mm-hmm.
to now you're talking about guys where they'll be good starters, some of them, but they're not going to be the all star talent.
No, they're not going
And
to move the dial as much as the top six, really.
but yeah, and I'm being open and honest about that because one of the things I hate seeing is I hate seeing GMs, get ripped off into trading for, a pick where a cliff has dropped and then they've given up valuable assets for a lesser talent player. And I think that's where some of the teams who consistently have trouble winning, that's the trap that they fall into. So I'm trying to bring more parity and equality into the league that way.
Yeah, and that's fair to do, I think. So I guess in terms of the rest of the draft, I mean, I don't know whether you've managed to scout intensively on the rest of the draft because you always knew you were going to be in sort of that top six, top seven.
Yeah,
I mean,
the first 2-3 months I actually did scout lower in the draft because
did
I
you
still
have any
had
other draft picks this year, Tim, or is it just this one?
I have just this one now, but when I
Okay.
started, I also had the Utah Jazz pick,
Okay. Okay.
and then I traded that to get Mudaye.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Which
Yeah,
probably, I'm guessing from your scan, from what you're saying, that's worked out quite nicely for you.
yeah, it did.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of the Lakers going forward, you're obviously going to hopefully pick up a big building block in this draft. I mean, are you going to engage with the rest of the draft, or is it kind of you're picking a guy and then you're looking into free agency then and trades?
Picking my guy, looking into free agency. I had one hysterically funny offer for the number 2 pick. That, to be honest, if the guy was younger, I would have maybe considered it
Mm-hmm.
because he's been an elite player. Um, but when I got the offer, I just looked at, I laughed. I was like, and I responded to the guy, nope, he does not fit my window. It would be even, personally, it would have been even more disastrous than the Kevin Durant trade was.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, Kevin Durant turned into Chris Middleton, which turned into the number 2 pick. And I would like to point out that Miles said last year that the Lakers pick will never be more valuable to anyone else other than the Lakers. And everybody trashed me for making that Middleton trade for my pick back. And I'm like, well, here we are now. And, whoever I take at number 2, personally, I think will be a better fit for my system than Middleton. So for me, that trade worked out. It worked out for Marcos as well. Middleton was a key part of his resurgence back to relevance this year. So, yeah, it ended up a great deal for everyone. I personally would love to make a trade. You know, I love making trades, but I am so not moving out of the number two spot. And the other assets that I have, people just aren't interested in right now, which is fine. It happens. So my guess is we go hunting in free agency. I think we'll have somewhere between 40 and 50 million in cap space, some ridiculous number.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I could potentially offer, I think, like three max contracts if I wanted to, which is interesting because one of the things that DDS sometimes does as part of the free agency algorithm, it looks at who you have offers out to. And, you know, say I had offers out to 3-star elite players, one of the things the game looks at is, okay, he's offering out to all three of these guys. They would be great to play together, you know, and, you know, really want to build a winning team. So then they all sign with that team. It's something that I saw in one of the DDS versions with the Summer of LeBron James.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
where there were a bunch of teams with cap, and I noticed that whoever LeBron signed with, there would be like one or two other stars who would also sign with LeBron. So completely separate from reality, of course. But
yeah.
in terms of the free agency sim engine, that was coming into factor. So whoever brought in LeBron, you know, the algorithm will look and say, okay, uh, LeBron and some other random superstar both offered contracts by this team. That would be a really winning team, so they both sign.
Mm.
So potentially that dynamic could happen. Maybe,
So
I don't know.
you suggesting the LA Lakers are going to build a big three? Is that what you're suggesting this summer?
Potential.
Free agents who are big enough to make that happen?
I'm going to say it might happen. It might not. I would have to look at who all is in free agency. Personally, I will say I've always loved Ben McLemore. Uh, BT knows I tried to get him repeatedly from the Kings. Um, and so, you know, I'm giving him a max contract offer. So is New York. So is Boston. You know, I think Boston free agents are going to be targeted this year. Um, and Dennis knows that, so he's going to be throwing out max contracts as well. But you never know. Maybe the
No,
Celtics get Clippers this offseason.
you never know, DDS, and it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting, and I'm sure it's going to be fun for you with the draft and with all that cap space. And uh,
Yep.
wish you all the best with the draft and the free agency, and hopefully the Lakers come back to prevalence next season. It's been great to have you on.
Yep.
But before we go, just we feel we should have a shout out to the two GMs who are in the finals, Andrew and Psychological, and
Yeah.
best
Yep.
of luck for the remaining games and make it a cracking finals for us to view.
Yeah, definitely. It should be fun. So, and what are your off-season plans?
I haven't got any yet. I'm still
Okay.
reviewing what happens in the draft because we actually have a pick this year, which is surprising. So it depends on that and how we play out. We don't have much cap space really, so our upgrade is going to come hopefully through the draft really or through trades. So we'll see. Watch this space.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good.